Thank you, Ciarán Comhairle. Taoiseach, you know, and I think we all know that the Rehab organisation has been asked by the Public Accounts Committee, and has indeed been before the Public Accounts Committee, to answer very important questions in relation to salaries, pensions and a whole range of other issues pertaining to the organisation. And I think for good reason, and I think we'd all agree that's in the public interest, just like other organisations in the charitable area who have significant and substantive service contracts with the state. And in the context of Rehab, you're looking at about 80 million worth of funding from the taxpayer to Rehab. So it's clearly in the public interest that those who are asked to go before the Public Accounts Committee would do so. And there has been an unacceptable degree of prevarication and delay by the Rehab organisation in its dealings with the Public Accounts Committee. And in particular, I think people were surprised and very taken back by the refusal of former Chief Executive Officer Frank Flannery to appear before the Public Accounts Committee. A strategic advisor to the Taoiseach, his right-hand man on many fronts, who would know really the importance of the Oireachtas and of committees like the Public Accounts Committee, and has not gone forward to answer questions that remain unanswered. And I think what was really unacceptable is that on the very day Public Accounts were meeting with Rehab, Mr Flannery was actually in Leinster House on other business, which was metaphorically giving the two fingers to the Public Accounts Committee, which I believe to be unacceptable. And I'd ask you, would you agree that that's unacceptable? More so, the reports in the Irish Times that organisations like Rehab, and Rehab specifically, was paying its directors, and it's reported that Mr Flannery was paid to lobby Fine Gael ministers and Labour Party ministers. Now, I would ask you, Taoiseach, do you accept the principle that it's wholly wrong for organisations, charitable organisations in particular, who have such substantive service contracts with the state, to be paying its directors money to lobby government ministers to arrange meetings with officials in government departments? So fundamentally, that's an unethical principle to go with and to adopt. And I'd ask if you would accept that that indeed is unacceptable. Thank you. And finally, my final question is that Mr Flannery has been appointed by the government, by Minister Hogan, as chairman of the Forum on Philanthropy. And that's an organisation, and through Mr Flannery, has been lobbying for changes, for example, to tax rules and residency governing tax exiles. Is it appropriate, in your mind, that he should continue on that position whilst still refusing to go before the Public Accounts Committee, a cherished institution of the Oireachtas?
Well, first of all, I was asked this question here on Thursday, and I stated on that occasion very clearly, and I repeat again, that I believe that Mr Flannery should attend before the Public Accounts Committee. Now, I have seen the letter that the clerk of the Public Accounts Committee has written to the Chief Executive of the Rehab Group. It's a letter that was issued yesterday, which makes it very clear, which names a number of people, including Mr Flannery, that the committee wishes to interview. And I believe that all of those that the committee wishes to interview should appear before that committee. With regard to the issue of lobbying, this government, lobbying is a part of, I suppose, our democratic system. People have a right to lobby. But what we do need to have around lobbying is transparency. And this government has been preparing legislation to provide a regime whereby there will be a register of lobbyists. Those who are engaged in formal lobbying, professional lobbyists, there will be a requirement for them to register, and there will also be a requirement to record the lobbying that takes place. In other words, that the public will know who is lobbying whom and for what. That legislation is at an advanced stage of preparation. The general scheme of the bill was submitted for pre-legislative scrutiny by the Finance, Public Expenditure and Reform Committee, and their report has now been received. The drafting of the bill is proceeding, and Minister Howland plans to present the bill to the Houses of the Oireachtas early in the second quarter of this year, so that when that bill is enacted, we will have a register of lobbyists and we will have a transparent regime in relation to lobbying. With regard to Mr Flannery's position as chairman on the Forum on Philanthropy, it is my understanding that he is stepping down from that position.
First of all, thank you. Thank you for your comment, Taoiseach, your view that Mr Flannery should go before the Public Accounts Committee. I agree with you on that. I'm somewhat curious that you perhaps didn't respond to my question in relation to the appropriateness, the correctness of organisations like Rehab in particular, charitable organisations who provide services for people with intellectual and physical disabilities and who have large service contracts with the state in the provision of such services, that they would pay their directors to organise meetings with ministers and with government officials on behalf of such organisations. I think personally, my own view is it's wrong. They should not be paying their directors money. No one should in that situation. We're not talking about private companies or anybody else. We're talking about people who have daily meetings with the state in terms of the services they provide, ongoing meetings. And I think it's extraordinary that someone with the unrivalled access to power that Mr Flannery had, probably still has, should be paid. It hasn't been denied. There's been no clarification around that Irish Times report or no rebuttal of it. I find that extraordinary that someone really at the centre, I mean, Minister Quinn said he would be met regularly on the Tuesday morning of cabinet meetings. I think there should be very clear statements, apart altogether from a lobbyist bill, that organisations like that who deal with the government on a very regular basis, be it the Brothers of Charity, be it Enable Ireland, be it Rehab, they shouldn't be paying people to meet government ministers. There's one thing you can say about our system, it is accessible. And I'm not casting any aspersions on ministers or anything about meeting, Rehab or organisations like that. 80 million is the scale of money that the state pays out in terms of the services provided by Rehab. And so the meetings are quite regular in terms of those service contracts. And there's absolutely no basis, in my view, or foundation or rationale for any organisation to be paying large fees to its own directors with a view to organising meetings with government ministers or indeed with government officials. And I would ask you, would you accept that view?
Honestly.
Well, I don't know what arrangements were made for payment between Rehab and Mr Flannery, other than I read the reports in the newspapers as you have. It would seem to me that the appropriate place for that issue to be pursued is at the Public Accounts Committee. And again, I would encourage Mr Flannery to attend that committee. I think the issue of, we've had, this whole issue of lobbying is not a new phenomenon, and it's not a new problem. And we have back over the years, we have seen a lot of issues arising from lobbying and who's paid and who has access and so on. There's nothing per se wrong. There is nothing per se wrong with lobbying. People lobby all of the time. What we need to have,
allow the answer, please.
What we need to have is we need to have absolute transparency about what is happening in the area of lobbying. We need to have a record, and this is what the legislation will provide for, that when somebody walks in the door to a government minister or to a department, there will be a record of what was asked for, who asked for it, and on whose behalf did they ask. Secondly, where people are lobbying on a professional basis, on a paid basis or on some kind of a remunerated basis, there will be a register of those lobbyists which will identify who the lobbyists are, who they are acting on behalf of, how much they are getting paid, who they are lobbying, what they are asking for, and who stands to benefit from it. That is the transparency that we need to have around lobbying. And by the way, no, Deputy Martin.
Please.
Deputy Martin,
we're over time.
You had a long period of time.
We're over time here.
You had a long period of time, Deputy Martin, to reflect on this, and indeed a period of time when we had tribunal after tribunal examining issues of lobbying where senior figures in Fianna Fáil were involved. And as far as this government is concerned, there will be legislation. It is in the process of preparation. There will be legislation that will provide for absolute transparency in the area of lobbying.